Today, we're going to be looking at the Autorithm AI Expert Advisor by Ms. Zaha Faiz. So this lady has pumped out quite a few bots in the past, but this one is looking a bit different than some of her prior ones. And when I say different, I actually mean in a very positive light, because it looks to be a lot less manipulated than some prior versions. The signal looks good. There appears to be perhaps a real strategy behind it, which is actually rather interesting. So looking at the sales page here, we can see once again that they're heavily leaning on AI. And developers love to do this because it makes your bot sound fancy, and it's kind of funny because particularly if you look at the different text used, it almost always looks like ChatGPT wrote the sales page. And particularly as like a native English speaker, you're able to read through these things and see that most people don't actually write like this. So it's almost like a combination of ChatGPT and just jargon dropping to make it seem fancy. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a real bot, because it's kind of it's almost like a common practice in MQL5 that so many people do this by now that you can't really blame folks for doing it, because it's almost like everybody does it, so it's almost acceptable by now. And effectively what we're seeing here is that she's claiming that it's running sophisticated AI algorithms that work in harmony to process market data. And specifically, she's saying that there's a technical analysis version, there's also some pattern recognition, trend analysis, volatility analysis, time analysis, and there's also perhaps even a martingale system. So frankly, I don't think that an AI is probably doing any of this. Likely, you can have some basic technical entries, you can have risk management parameters, you can have volatility filters. All of this would be something which one could certainly put in a well-made trading robot. But I doubt that they're having like 10 different AIs or 10 different layers of a neural net calibrated to do this. So that seems a little bit on the skeptical side for me. But overall, it's looking like there could very well be a real strategy here. You need to have open router. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I guess she's claiming to use open router, which actually is pretty common because people do use it in order to access AI models. And maybe she does have a place for an API key. I would doubt that she's done this level of complexity, because this would require quite a bit of kind of legwork to do. And from her prior bots, they were never really all that legit. So I'm just a bit skeptical, but maybe she's really improved her R&D since her prior version. But my guess with this would be a pretty straightforward gold scalper, just looking at the actual trades. So if we look at the trade signal here, it's running on a good broker. There is a reasonable amount of deposits which were made. If we look at the history, they're not lot scaling, they're increasing with the balance. It just looks like a gold scalper because we have a really high win rate and we have an inverted risk reward. And that's a very valid strategy. And also, like, if you ever see this kind of inverted staircase where you have these big runs of winners and then losers, which tend to be a bit more significant, that's usually just a scalper. So very legit, looks like a real equity curve. It's just I highly doubt that there's too much AI going on here. So I took the liberty of running it on MetaTrader on the H1, and it actually looked kind of weird. When I tried to run it, it didn't actually close any of the positions, and it just kind of held everything the entire way. So I'm not quite sure why that happened, but something I'm going to now test is try to run it with 1 minute open, high, low, close, and maybe just picking some slightly different dates so that we're able to see if perhaps it's a bit different. So yeah, same idea here, right? Like, they're not actually closing any of the positions in a back test, which I honestly think is pretty weird because you would usually expect that to happen. Monitor currencies. So maybe I'm messing something up, but from what I can see, it doesn't really, at a back test, at least the default settings are not matching the live signal. That's usually not a good sign, because you should be able to go through and check and say, like, hey, why is it doing this? But regardless, the actual live signal looks pretty legitimate. So let's just quickly run this here so that we're able to see some trades and make a decision regarding the strategy. So if we look at the inputs, we can see that there is indeed a time filter. They do actually have a spot for an API key, which is interesting. Weekend protection system, so a few different filters. There is also a few risk management, and there is the option of using the martingale if so desired. So if as you guys can see, with these current settings, she's not actually closing any positions, which is kind of neat, but also a little bit concerning. Maybe we need to turn something off in the settings, active volatility safety system, enable news protection, auto clear old orders, secure positions. No, I don't see why it would be doing this when you actually run it. So that's kind of interesting, but also not great. So it looks like, yeah, they're just opening these clusters of trades and then holding them for very, very long periods of time, which is a bit weird. Like maybe she doesn't want people to actually backtest it, because I would think that that would not be the case. So let's go now here. I think it was January where we saw that. Let me try and see what's actually going on here. No, nothing. Maybe I scrolled the wrong way. Okay, so that would be January 2025. And let's go here. I guess, well, here we go. So it looks like a pretty simple mean reversion oscillator based system. And it appears to be a stop and reverse base entry. Ah, okay, that could be why. So there could just be, it could be doing a stop and reverse base entry where, oops, sorry, I moved my head. It could be doing a stop and reverse base entry, and essentially it's putting the new order at the prior order's stop loss. And that can absolutely work. It's a pretty common practice, but there appears to be some sort of glitch going on towards the end, which is not letting it actually close the positions. But what I can see so far here is it does appear to be a real strategy. It looks like a mean reversion system with probably a stop and reverse base entry. There's something wrong with the back test. She does actually give you a spot to put the API key. So perhaps it really is using AI, but I would personally be pretty skeptical just because the marketing language is a bit too fluffy and they're not actually going into enough detail. But there could very well be a basic like API call going on here, and they could essentially be doing that. So you never know. They could be using AI. It isn't really rocket science to put a very basic LLM call in a model, so that could exactly be what she's doing. So overall, it's not a scam. There's a real strategy. The signal looks good. Do I think it's the world's greatest trading bot? Probably not, because there's just not that much transparency going on. We don't really know for sure what it's doing, but maybe if she updates the backtest in such a way where you're able to get a better idea of what's going on here, it could be worth looking into. So guys, not a scam, but also not amazing. So let me know if you buy this bot and leave me your comments in the comment section. Cheers.